Hello again and welcome to the program. I am Suren. Just imagine now that we all are living in a world where exists no strife, where everybody is able to fulfill their potentials, freeing their minds from negative thoughts and fears. What kind of world we would be living in? That's a good question. Everybody living on the face of the planet Earth has the capability for growth and development in terms of the ability to acquire unique qualities of personality and new skills. My question is, why so many people grow old feeling that they never have fulfilled themselves or explored their abilities? Do you have an answer? I can come up with many questions. In a world where we all are surrounded by many lies, fears, and negative thoughts of the mind. These may not be recognized in the largest scale. However, they have a potential to influence the person's entire outlook on life. And so, placing unnecessary limits on what the person senses is probable. They indeed ruin the mind and are the major or minor blocks, which can indeed close down the avenues of development, preventing many others from making the most of their existence. I will call this a very serious block from which many suffer in several degrees of the fear of failure. Do you feel failed? Do you fear failure? Many people make the common mistake of guessing what failure should be at a given task as a sign of individuals' inadequacy. One may find that one's pathway is blocked all the time by their own reluctance to take risks or confronting new challenges. However, learning to recognize failure for what it is as an opportunity to learn something new is like a signpost, pointing the way to a more productive approach. We all know that everyone fails sometimes, and the very successful folk are those who learn from their experiences. But some tend to repeat those mistakes time after time. Obvious question is, are you one of them? Let's look at yet another frame of mind which can stand in the way of self-development and is typified by a kind of habitual submissiveness, leaving people feel helpless when dealing with others, who are doomed to be more assured, more powerful, and probably dominant. If you are feeling it and having the feelings or thoughts of inadequacy, you may need to establish a more balanced sense of self-worth, learning to recognize instances where you have failed. When asserting yourself correctly. And that will allow you to stand up on your own 2 feet for your own interests preserving your own self-esteem, even if you don't win out of every possible front. At the end, you will know that any kind of mental block is created by the existence of negative thoughts and assumptions. If you go from time to time with a forever depressed person, and in fact, you may quickly discover very pessimistic view of their own lives, can indeed put them in a downward spiral. In other words, I will say, if you are one of those who expect only those kinds of things to happen to you, your expectations are very likely to be fulfilled accordingly. Therefore, establishing more optimistic outlook on life, you are able to reverse that spiral and start to take positive steps towards a better life. If you truly want to have your potentials fulfilled, you need to free your mind from negative thoughts and fears. You need to allow the chance to fail. What kind of an old man are you? You might ask me now, if you wish. I might be. But we all know that not one single individual likes to fail or feeling inadequate and humiliated, carrying that feeling with them most of the time. They accompany it, but this fear can be much worse than failure itself, because it does stop you from taking steps to change your life. If we do not take risks and feel, it would be not possible to learn, change, or improve one's life. In addition, our chances of achieving happiness and success may depend on our doing all of those positive things. Every day, as human beings, we have those manifestations and fears which can prevent us when we want to go out with someone on a date, for example, or from applying for higher levels of jobs, or from learning a new skill, such as singing, or painting, or sculpting. The fear may become a phobia. It may even become very intense, irrational worry, which can grow and become debilitating, in which it prevents you from carrying out simple, ordinary tasks and causes you to avoid others in your everyday life and social situations. What do you do when fear awakes? There are two types of this which we can consider. One of them can be considered as learning from scratch, and the other, the big event. When we begin to learn to play a piano, or start learning a foreign language, or painting for the first time, we might likely sound very clumsy for a period of time, perhaps feeling that we may have made ourselves a fool. They cannot bear to put themselves in this condition, could they? When you start learning to play the piano, or perhaps a foreign language, or start to paint and sculpt, you may think you are sounding clumsy for the time, or making yourself a fool in front of people. Just dwell on that for a moment. These so-called big event moments may include asking someone to agree to undertake a major project at work or socially. There are occasions when you have only just one chance to perform well, such as when you are required to make a public speech. By the way, how are you doing when required to make a public speech? Are you faced with this kind of a situation at all? These scenarios may be something in common, in which you are required to place your self-esteem on the line. The fear does not dwell only there and be considered as a failure, but as can be seen in the following sequences, it can lead to admit your shortcomings to yourself. To stop feeling the fear of failure, we all need to be able to face up the possibility, yet you may not excel in every undertaking, or to comprehend that such shortcomings not affect your overall sense of personal, individual self. In fact, I will say that we all have experienced this kind of fear to some degree, but some people seem to be prone to it. Unfortunately, very little research has been done on this issue. However, it is well known that there are individuals who are generally anxious at an increased risk of falling into this trap. These type of people tend to show much lower threshold relating to stress. Several attempts at a particular task are often enough to give such an individual a real phobia of failure. If you are someone who scored high for the traits of emotionality, any questions we might consider may be especially susceptible to an exaggerated fear of failure, which may be quite disastrous at the end. But how can we get out of this? How can we find a way to free ourselves from that? Just think about it. Unfortunate consequence of experiencing a few failures can lead you where you may become very isolated from the people around you. This goes for all of us. In fact, relationships begin with a trying period in which you and the other person work out whether you are likely to get along. But if you are accustomed to expecting only failure in your dealings or undertakings with the world, you are very likely to withdraw from these periods of trial before they can yield fruit. If you are a person who expects only rejection, will inevitably be fulfilled, because your behavior about yourself or the world around you will not allow any other alternative, and your fear of failure will be amplified. There are many examples of that we can think of. Think about not winning any money out of lotto tickets. At one stage, in your younger days, probably at a college, that you felt very lonesome because your girlfriend has left you, and you look at other friends of yours who kept theirs, quite happily, looking very relaxed and very attractive to other female friends, or vice versa. And his or her friends are those you would desire to be very simply just friend of yours. Yet you don't know what your friend has experienced. That's a fact. How is your friend? Occasionally, we all have been experiencing rejection from others and did not develop the fear of failure and kept going, whereas you have experienced several rejections and developed the big fear. Sometimes I believe it is better to learn not to care too much. It may be tempting to believe that people who appear confident and very successful, immune to fear of failure. But believe me, it is not true at all. So, what have they done to be more successful? Question. Could it be that they learned to deal with both sides of the coin, the fear and the possibility of failure? Younger and married for the first time, both my wife and myself, we thought we were inept in the kitchen. I knew my wife was very frightened of inviting anyone to our place, since they were sure that we probably wasted expensive ingredients and winded up with edible dishes. However, of her bonding with a cult, our social life suffered seriously because we felt unable to accept any hospitality that they would be unable to return in a similar way. And this was not shared with others who had reputation for good friendliness, let alone good cuisine. Things were even worse. My wife was full of concern on safety and health with those others who may have offered reassurance by describing the details of any other culinary disasters that may have occurred. Remember, those others, not belonging to her cult, may be eating blood. In short, we were all learning after a few failures that she decided to restrict herself to small gatherings only. At home were fairly simple dishes she had in mind to offer when we had outsiders visiting us. I was unable to think clearly from time to time with a very cloudy mind because she was burdened with a fear of the end of times, and because of the pattern of the cult members followed and who were more influential in her life performance. No matter how successful such a relationship might be or might have been, there was always a question of consideration. You might be an athlete, a successful one, running against the others, and trained very hard, and pleased to be amongst them, expecting to win only. And if you would have been not pleased on the last time, it would make you feel like a failure. So, though you might be quite a compatible athlete and the others having very positive attitudes, it is likely to build gradually. Other humans should never stop you becoming successful. Nobody should stop you. However, my question is, are we afraid to fail? How can we approach such challenges while life is offering us opportunities for our success? But it may carry some risk of failure at the same time. Do we need to be timid, sensible, or somehow foolhardy? How can one assert? The ability to assert oneself properly is very essential for a life fulfilled. If you think, you probably realize that you have passed through all these experiences. You probably became more adept at presenting yourself and making use of your knowledge. You will also have a sense, yet your capability to assert yourself has not been always constant. You may be, by nature, very little self-assertive when you are tired or when you are sick, depressed or overwhelmed by your circumstances. Then you may start feeling that you can never assert yourself enough, or that your attempts and putting forward your ideas tend to be misconstrued, as well as aggressive or fanatical or dictatorial or anything else. However, if you feel about your assertiveness, it may be that you could improve your performance and enjoy the benefits it brings. Again, what is self-assertion? Basically, it is a firm insistence that others pay you the deserved attention and respect to which you are entitled as a human person. But self-assertion can only be practiced within certain limits. If you are submissive and self-facing, others will tend to overlook you. However, if you are overbearing and aggressive, people will avoid you. Question: are you submissive? Submissiveness is not necessarily wrong. It is not a negative behavior. If everyone refused to submit to proper figures of authority, the social design would quickly collapse. What we need to avoid is being submissive when it is inappropriate or when it is to expose you to psychological harm. Others who submit may demand. Whims and fancies of us tend to suffer as resolved. On the other hand, people who are constantly unassertive with their friends, superiors, outsiders, and family members often complain of being treated like a doormat. But it is really their own submissiveness. The other people are to blame. In your childhood days, you might be taught always to think of others before considering your own needs. And when you went to school and started to work in an office, perhaps later, you probably would go out of your way to make yourself useful to others. But this time, complaining that you are always the one who is called upon to run the others as well as cleaning up their mess. And if there is a mishap and you are being expected to do all these things and probably complaining that you don't seem to be able to say no, and that means that your parents failed to warn you that people may take advantage of your willingness to be helpful. If you had held your ground in refusing to do more than your fair share, the others would have to do their things would be different. When you are happy to assert yourself with others, it may seem that it is because you stand up for yourself, and so you are more likely to become scapegoat for anything that may go wrong. People will take advantage of you, and in certain cases, your complaints may make you a victim of bullying. Believe it or not. No matter how difficult the circumstance is, there is, though, but simple solution to it. You must stand on your 2 feet and on your own ground, resolutely insisting that other people treat you no differently from the way they would want to be treated by themselves. Here is another question. What is the appropriate assertiveness? If you have achieved the right degree of it, and when you are able to stand up for your own rights, making your thoughts and feelings clear to others, in spite of their unwillingness to listen, you must be ready to refuse to do the things that you don't want to do, and be able to say no when that needs to express how you feel. Some others adopt any aggressive and bullying men to get the message across. However, you may have more success if you develop more controlled ways of asserting yourself. Majority having difficulty in asserting themselves properly do so because they let their confidence and indeed communication skills be useful, not because they are united by the temperament. In this case, we may need to work on changing our attitudes if one is not assertive enough. By nature, one can indeed learn to be. It's not much different than playing a musical instrument or riding a motorbike. Having assertiveness is indeed a skill that we all can practice. The one starts practicing self-assertion, one may need to get rid of that contributes to submissive behavior. It does not matter syndrome is a common rationalization. With that, I would like to stop here so that we can digest these points. We will meet again by the next episode. Until then, please keep happy. Smile often. And be well. Thank you.